The meeting is now called to order. Roll call, please.
Rolf Peterson, Maren Anderson, Bruce Browning,
Here.
Abe Levine,
Here.
Nathan,
Here.
David,
Here.
Cindy.
Here.
And welcome to the city representatives also. Thank you for coming. Okay, the first thing on the agenda here is the approval of the minutes from December 13th. I'm assuming everybody read it in gory detail, and any comments?
I just see one typo under section 7. Communications from the chair. The sentence right below that, chair is misspelled. Looks like cherry. C-H-A-R-I Anderson. Okay, thanks.
Oh, correct. You sure the person's name wasn't Cherry Anderson by some chance?
I know, I double checked on that.
Okay, aside from that, are there any other comments or corrections? Does anybody want to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion, we accept them.
Do we have a second?
I second.
So ordered. Meeting minutes are accepted. Okay, the next thing on the list here is, let me scroll back up again. The adoption of the agenda for today's meeting. Anybody have any suggestions? Actually, do we need to cross off the Comcast presentations?
Yeah, that's Mr. Chair. I've notified a couple members of you as you came in that Comcast won't be here to give that presentation tonight. So you could just delete that item and we'll put that on the May agenda, and then we'll start with item 6B.
Motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, very good. All right, so let us go through the agenda here. Where will I find that? Is that further down, or is that just the original? It's the first thing. So public comment is, anybody in the public there have a comment? Other than Harvey the rabbit? Guess not. Okay. So reports and discussions, we're going to skip the Comcast engineer. Franchise renewal overview and plans for 2018.
Mr. Chair, we have a few screens here to talk about franchise renewal and give you an idea of what's coming up this year. There's a franchise that will expire in 2021 with both CenturyLink and Comcast, and it's a 3-year process, so that's why we're getting started now. Comcast has given the city formal notice that they seek renewal, but CenturyLink has not yet.
Do we, I don't know how we do things, but do we solicit, just from the city's perspective, not the commission per se, like a Verizon, Fios, or other people that it's open and somebody wants to come in and get a franchise that they could do that? I mean, do we actually proactively, or do we just wait to see who might be interested? How does that work normally?
These are non-exclusive franchises, which means that these other providers are welcome to come and build a system in our city, but I have to admit we have not invited those other companies to come and build systems in St. Louis Park.
Is it worth it for us to do it? I mean, what do you think? I'm just curious. I don't have an advocacy of one position or another. I'm just curious how this works.
Understood. Practically speaking, no, most of those companies are not interested. A way that it might work would be that if you were in the region for Verizon or AT&T where they're doing their other systems, then it's somewhat practical to try to get them to move from, for example, if they were located in Minneapolis, move across the border to here. That's sort of what has happened with U.S. Internet and their internet services. They offer a service there, and we've invited them across the border. So, but for cable television, it's not quite the same. So I've got a couple other slides to go through just to give you an idea what to expect later this year. And that is that there's a few tools in the franchise renewal toolbox. One of the things that is prudent is to evaluate the past performance of the cable companies, of the television provider companies. Frequently, a franchise fee review is done. Frequently, a technical review is completed to make sure that the system is all legal according to international electrical codes. Community surveys or focus groups are sometimes conducted. And then a review of the PEG access facilities to make sure that that is up to snuff and meets the needs for people now and into the future. And so as far as we've gotten to this point, the city intends to have Brian Grogan as the primary consultant to assist with this process. And the staff seeks commission input on whether to appoint a subcommittee to assist the staff. And finally, the city team includes Tom Harmoning, the city manager, Clint Pyers, who you recently saw, the CIO, and Jackie and myself so far. So this is where the next step, I suppose, it'd probably be prudent for me to ask Jackie if there's anything else she wants to add before you tackle the topic of whether or not a subcommittee might be involved, or if folks want to volunteer, or however you want to proceed with that.
Our immediate next step would be to set up a work time with the council to hear feedback from them on what they wish to see from the cable franchise. So that's where the subcommittee of the commission would be helpful to us to both prepare for that meeting and then be there on the date of the meeting to at least be in the audience and hear the discussion and provide any input that might be required.
So what does everybody think about a couple of us helping out here?
I'd be happy to.
I would too.
Look like you're ready to
I
volunteer.
would three.
Well, I'll tell you what, since you're on with me on the other one, I'm going to
Subcommittee.
let them do that.
That would be fine.
And, okay, so if we do have two volunteers, if such a subgroup gets constituted, and sounds great.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, review the annual report to the council and feedback from the meeting. Is that yours to discuss too, Reg?
Well, I was there that evening and really enjoyed hearing from all the commissions, and I thought that Maren and Bruce did a great job of bringing the council up to date with what we're tackling for this year. So I just want to commend you and thank you for that. Earlier, Commissioner Levine asked Bruce about questions from the commission, from the city council, excuse me, and there wasn't any too much specific feedback about the presentation that was made. But as we start meeting with the city council for a franchise renewal, for example, there may be further direction on that regard. Just want you to know that the entire council appreciates all the work that you commissioners do.
Any of you have any comments? Were you guys there?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yes, it was a very nice presentation that was done by Bruce and Maren.
Agreed. It was a great presentation, great opportunity to learn what the other committees do, but also I'd say a great job on the preparers for this committee in terms of the presentation and content.
Great, thank you. Good stuff.
Mr. Chair, I do have one more thing I meant to mention, which is that I plan to, each month, at the beginning of the month, send you folks a list of the other boards and commission meetings that may be occurring that month, because it was mentioned that there was some crossover on certain topics that would be valuable, that could to be discussed with different commissioners. An example was the street lights, for example, that are energy efficient. It's the kind of thing that may have already been tackled by the Environment and Sustainability Commission, and those kind of topics. So you expect to hear from me that it's certainly not required. We already have Maren and David that are on another commission, and so, but that's certainly something that as we see their agendas, might be worthwhile for somebody to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
So on that same note, was there somebody from each of the commissions that was going to attend one of our meetings, or handing out the calendar, then we could attend one of theirs that month, or was there any kind of plan in place?
No.
Not at this moment, with the exception that we do put agendas for the different televised meetings on both the internet, on our website, and then on the cable TV messaging,
Okay.
as we do for all council meetings, for example. So it wouldn't be that hard for me to work with the liaisons of these other commissions as well, to let them know about it. And we haven't met with the liaisons yet to cover that, but that's a good suggestion.
Okay.
I have another question, Reg. I don't know if this is the best time to bring it up or not, but you and I had talked about adding a student member to our commission. And I did have a conversation with Councilman Rogg the night that we had the meetings here. She passed along some information to me, which I in turn passed along to Reg, because the city council has to approve, if we find a student that would be willing to serve on the commission, the city council has to approve that individual in order for that to happen. But she gave us some ideas as to some people maybe we could contact at the school to find out if we can generate some interest. Ideally, from my perspective anyway, would probably be somebody that's a sophomore, that's going to be around for a while, as opposed to somebody graduating in 6 months. But it looks, the information she shared with us looks very interesting, and maybe that'll help us along.
Maybe for starters, we start it as a non-voting position and then see how that all works.
I don't know what we have done in the past. Has it been a voting position?
It is a voting position.
That's what I thought.
Okay. The only reason I'm bringing that up is I have no experience with this, and they may be very talented individuals, or, you know, they're 15 years old and don't really have a lot of knowledge about some of the esoterica, perhaps, and so that was my only concern.
I think they might have the interest, although they may not have the general knowledge we do at the moment.
Correct, yeah. Okay.
Our history with youth members is we've had 2 different youth members over the last 10 years. It's probably been 3 or 4 years since the last one. And they were active in attending meetings, and they talked to me a little bit outside of the meetings, but they didn't particularly participate that much during the meetings. I think it's also kind of a matter of personality with certain people that, with certain people you might have ready, fire, aim, and that are willing to be talkative about technology, and then other folks who prefer to try to get a knowledge base before contributing very much. So it depends on the person that is appointed. And just to follow up with Bruce's suggestion, it was a high school teacher, and I sent some background on both this commission and the other commission for them in case they would be interested in helping us find some young people that may want to apply for that. And I haven't heard back yet from the teacher, but I will, of course, keep you posted. And the city clerk's office is city clerk is the person who would handle the appointment process. The city council would still need to evaluate and make the formal appointments, and that's happening in April and May.
Is there any, I can't think of a better word, but sort of incentive we could offer a student? And I'm sure there really isn't, without getting like some sort of school board approval, like, they're not going to give credit for coming here. But it does seem like something where if there was at least a little like, I don't know, something they can put on their resume or.
Well,
something
that's
that
it. When
benefits
you're
them in
applying
some
for
way.
college, they want to know what extracurricular things you did, and this
Yeah.
would be perfect. Okay, our favorite subject, review the Comcast compiled complaint log. If I remember, it wasn't that thick. Don't we usually have a representative from Comcast to help review these? If I remember correctly.
But typically, someone from Comcast attends the meetings, and they, as I mentioned on Monday, said they wouldn't be able to attend. But most of these have been followed up, and I put the person's name in of the contact person from Comcast that responds to the complaint. But I try to redact the customer's name every single time, and I have to admit, there might have been a couple that have slipped through the cracks there at some point.
It always seems like many of these complaints revolve around costs of some sort or a bill that is not correct. And I saw some responses about it takes the system time to catch up if there's been a change on a bill. I don't know if there's anything they can do to necessarily improve that, but that would certainly make it a better experience, obviously, for the people that are taking their service.
You bring up a good point because the Comcast has recently redesigned their bill for the customer. I don't know if the back-end office area is more responsive or not, but I will ask them that specifically.
What I'm seeing is a lot of billing system issues. And building one right now in my own company, getting them right with all the quirks that go in it is nearly impossible. And so, to some degree, I don't want to say give these guys a pass, but I could appreciate that no matter what you build for, there's some combination of things that you'll do that the billing system wasn't built to handle. And all you could do is hopefully that there's an ombudsman of sorts that would work the problem for the customer. It's about the only way that some of these things would ever get taken care of. Okay, let's see, what's next?
If I can jump in for just one moment too, Reg, maybe a clarification. Comcast has rolled out gigabit service. Is that across the entire city now for anybody that has cable access?
To the best of my knowledge, it is the entire city, and that's how
Okay.
they tend to do things, is citywide.
Okay, thank you.
I can speak, I can at least say that I've tested. I do not have it, but I've checked, and I can get it if I would want to.
Yeah, and it is gigabit service, but anything over 150 uses the same equipment as the gigabit service. So if you order the 250 like I did, you get the same modem and the same whatever, it's just slower. So that you can later upgrade to the gigabit if you want, you don't have to buy any, or pay for, or have any equipment changes.
Okay, so it is a change on their end.
That's it.
You use the same equipment regardless of what degree of service
Right.
you get, and then
Right.
they make an adjustment at their end.
The one thing to be aware of, and the technicians agreed that this isn't right, but it's the equipment they got, is that the older modems had 4 Ethernet ports and the new ones have 2.
That's interesting.
And you sort of, if you got 4 things that you used to connect, now 2 of them don't get to connect unless you get some sort of a port expander or something. And they don't tell you that until you're in the house and you go, wait a minute, there's 2 ports missing. And that's just the nature of the equipment, and apparently it's not out of the ordinary any longer. With Wi-Fi being as prevalent as it is, they probably cost reduce the modems.
Interestingly enough, if I may use another example with CenturyLink, they have a 4-port modem on their stuff.
Uh-huh.
You can get both. You can get a 2 or you can get a 4. And interestingly enough, when the technician came to my home to install, he said, "Are you buying the modem from us?" And I responded, "Yes." And he said, "Well, this has only got 2 ports on it, just a moment." And he made a call to one of his colleagues, said, "I'll be right back." And he went and got another modem that had 4 ports on it and brought it in.
Oh,
So
definitely, yeah.
I know it exists with their service. I just,
Right, Comcast does not. They've got one brand of modem for the high-speed service, and that's it.
Okay.
So,
A 4-port switch does only cost $20, so it's
Yeah.
not too big a deal.
oh, no, I agree. For those of us in the room
for a
here,
lot of people, though, that would be a stretch.
well, it
in
might be a
terms of
stretch, or they wouldn't even know they could do it.
just- Right. right.
Yeah, and I would posit that those buying the 250 or the gigabit service, the $20 wouldn't be too big a stretch, because you're already paying for that high-speed service. But they don't tell you that when you walk out of the store with the modem, and then you plug it in, you go, wait a minute. And so that's my only comment that I would make, that they need to be a little bit more forthcoming. They probably didn't even realize, those in the office, that there is this thing. The technician said, oh yeah, they're all like that. And so that's how I found out about it. So anyway, small comment. All right, review CenturyLink 4th quarterly meeting memo and complaint log.
Commissioner Browning or Munson, would you care to tackle that? You were both able to attend.
There wasn't, I think maybe the only complaint that I can remember, I received a complaint the night that I was here, was just from a resident who went to sign up for the service, and somebody came to her door and a solicitor on behalf of CenturyLink anyway. And she was all set to do that. And then he or she came back a day later and said, well, I'm sorry, we can't, because the service is not being offered in your area of the city right now. So they're further in to St. Louis Park with fiber, but they're not in their baseline service, the Prism TV portion, which requires 25 megabit per second download speed in order to get it. I can't remember what the percentage of people in the city that have that now is, but it's much larger than it was. And they're moving ahead. I don't know, Reg, and I can't remember if they indicated, do they plan on wiring the entire city with fiber at some point? Which obviously is a more expensive proposition for them, which I understand. But is that their end game at this point, or do we know that?
Related to the franchise, their end game was to attempt to have all customers, all areas of the city, be able to receive Prism TV by the end of the 5-year franchise.
Okay.
In terms of the fiber distribution all through the city, they haven't actually made that announcement, and they haven't done that in other cities generally either.
Okay. Their complaint log, there weren't really many complaints as such that I remember. I don't have that paperwork sitting in front of me, but I don't think it was an extraordinary number of complaints. Other complaints that I've seen on Nextdoor, where you see lots of things that involve cable in general, there are a lot of complaints with costs. There are a lot of complaints with billing, and it doesn't seem to matter so much whether it's CenturyLink or Comcast. Comcast may have more simply because they have more real estate in our city right now. But I didn't see anything that really struck me as, oh my gosh, this is really bad. It's kind of the things that we're used to hearing about regarding costs and regarding, gee, can't I get the service? So yeah, some people are bummed out that they can't get fiber, obviously, and I understand that. But that will change with time. They're still kind of a newer entry, but they are making headway, and the map shows that they are making headway. So it's just a question of how long will it take them.
Can I respectfully disagree? From what I've seen on Nextdoor of people complaining, with Comcast, it's a lot of just the general billing and
Yep.
things like that. But with CenturyLink, a lot of people have been disappointed in what they phrase as a bait and switch situations. And that does concern me. And
Can you be a little more specific when you
not
say
off the
bait
top
and
of my
switch?
head.
Okay.
Well, I mean, where they've had a representative come to their door, something
Okay.
offering something,
Yep.
and it hasn't turned out to be that.
This is
you
what
know,
happened to that one individual that evening. That's what I
yeah.
heard.
And so, I mean, these are just opinions, but I guess it does. It has been a little concerning to me, and I feel like it's one of those where, hopefully, as time goes on, we'll see it dissipate out more as CenturyLink moves in more.
Yeah,
but
and-
if it keeps up,
Yeah.
it should be a concern.
And it may not be, when I think of bait and switch, it's a really negative term, obviously. But I somehow think that sometimes the people that they send out aren't as well educated about what's available
I would agree
in
with
this
that.
particular area of the city versus what's available in the Lenox neighborhood or one of the other neighborhoods. So there's a little bit of lack of education, I think, going on too. I don't know if it's meant to be, quote, bait and switch, because you still have to have a product to have that happen. And apparently the product isn't there yet, so it's a little tougher. But yeah, I
So
understand
there's
what
no
you're saying.
switch, there's just the bait.
It's just the bait,
exactly.
right.
Like I said, it was their phrasing. But
However, that does cause ill will in the community,
yeah.
and so.
Doesn't do them good.
Do we need to call somebody from CenturyLink and have them explain how this is going on and what they're doing to make sure that, that this, that if it's an education issue or, we determine that it's a cultural issue? I can't believe why anybody would knock on doors not to sell them anything.
And I don't know, too, if
you
these
know,
people that are going out are the actual CenturyLink employees, or are they somebody CenturyLink is contracting with?
Well, that's it, that could be it
And I
too.
don't know that for
But either
sure.
way, first of all, it has two parts. One, it doesn't do any good for CenturyLink, and two, it doesn't do any good for the city because we franchised them. And so, do we, maybe it won't become more pervasive, but if it did, and we didn't get ahead of it, then that would be a problem for us, I would think.
Maybe-
Do we need to take an action to maybe have, you know, like they do their quarterly meeting, come in at some point, and a few of us will be there and let them explain how they're getting, what they're doing about this.
Or you bring up a couple of great points there. Let me first start with Commissioner Dyer's comment about Nextdoor. The city received no complaints in the last quarter about CenturyLink. But if you see a thread, if any of you happen to be participants in Nextdoor and you see something like that that you think that is valuable for me to see, by all means send it to me. I can evaluate it, or just send it to CenturyLink for their edification. Because as Commissioner Browning said, their marketing people are not all employees. They are frequently hired with direction by CenturyLink to go out and sell their products. And of course, anytime you have contractors, there's a possibility of a misunderstanding of what the service is. But related to that, in our quarterly meeting, was that there was a series of there was an Attorney General complaint about CenturyLink's bait and switch activities, and that is being negotiated now. There was a preliminary draft that hasn't been approved yet by the company and the Attorney General, but that may be resolved soon. And what we're told by our CenturyLink contact is that they're focusing very much on their internet service price for life. And so it would be surprising to hear that they're doing a bait and switch with that, because I suppose one of the things that could happen would be that they were hoping to get one level of service, and that level wasn't available, and that would of course be really disappointing if you'd been, you know, seeing the ads on TV and expecting to get you know, a terrifically fast service for a low price, and instead you can get a slow service for a low price.
The person that asked the question that night, I haven't had the chance to call and follow up with, but I'm going to, just to get some specifics as to, okay, what exactly happened.
Could you do that too with your neighbor or friend, and find out if it was a bait with no switch, or a bait and they actually offered you something different?
Yeah, I'll try to take a look and see what I can find on there.
One of the things that CenturyLink has shared with us in the past months is that all of the advertising, whether it's internet or television or mass mailing or ad inserts, it's all national in nature. They don't have any influence on a local basis. So some of the messages that may be more tailored to what part of the market has the greater capability and what part is in progress of being built up, it can't be reflected at all in their advertising because it's nationally based.
Well, the national advertising, if you really read the fine print, is not available in all areas. Sure. So, I mean, even if it was, they would say that. So, yeah.
Another area for research, is there a way to pull the solicitation permits for Comcast and see if they represented Comcast in the name of some other business?
You're right, of course, that's an option. They do register with the city. I know that John followed up on that a year ago roughly to verify that they had received the proper solicitation permits.
What is that exactly? I mean, what is somebody doing?
So, correct me how the city's permitting process works, but I know from a solicitation perspective that solicitors need to register with the city before soliciting and wear a badge. And I don't know if as a part of that paperwork, they have to say, I'm soliciting for Comcast and I'm either a Comcast employee or I'm a something else employee. Working on behalf of. And that's something where, yeah, maybe we can learn something from that, and maybe if we learn there isn't enough detail in the solicitation process, maybe there's an opportunity for improvement there as well.
All right.
And for the company, that would be a good thing. If
Yeah.
somebody's representing them incorrectly, that doesn't do them any good either.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just weigh in a bit on Nextdoor? We are administrators here at the city where we can post things to Nextdoor, but we do we try to keep emphasizing that we cannot see what's going out on Nextdoor out in the community. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest that in order to make sure we're getting the most detail from people who are having concerns with CenturyLink, and also to ensure their privacy and that we're not escalating a concern they have beyond what they would prefer, that you might suggest on Nextdoor, if you feel comfortable, that they contact Reg and give them the phone number, and then we can speak directly to them and get the information that we need.
That's a great idea.
And it does say on the CenturyLink bill to contact Reg, because I know it does on Comcast, is that correct? It should, right?
I honestly, I've gotten 2 bills. I honestly can't remember whether it does or not.
It's
I would
usually
have
on the
to-
back page.
I would
if
have to
you could-
look at
yeah,
it, and I get them electronically, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can check that, because I'm not 100% sure, but maybe it does.
Okay, yeah.
So are we saying that we should do a next door posting? If so, who wants to make the posting?
I wasn't suggesting that you make a blanket post. I was just saying if you see chatter or someone and you feel comfortable in your own neighborhood, just responding to that person and saying, if you have a concern, contact
Ah,
the city at this number.
okay,
I think that's a good idea.
okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, next item on the list, I guess that's where we are. Park TV Marketing, Programming, and Equipment Report for 2017.
You have a 3-page memo on this, and I guess a couple things to highlight would be the new equipment in this room, for example, that I wanted to specifically mention that the cameras were perhaps purchased from franchise fees, but almost the entire remodeling was done with the building fund and did not come from franchise fees. And that just makes a little bit of a difference so that you know that we're responsible stewards of the cable TV fund budget, and that includes some other big ticket items. For example, new improved terrific cameras for the Park TV production van, so they can use fiber cables, which are a lot more user-friendly. They're more lightweight, easy to use, and we actually do have fiber installed over at the Rock, the Rec Center Outdoor Center. And then later on this year, there'll be an improvement over at the high school to put fiber cables in there as well. So that's going to be really great for the number of productions that are done over at the high school. It's quite a few. Sometimes it's 2 a week, sometimes 3 a week in the fall and spring. And another just thing to highlight is that over 315 shows were produced by Park TV staff last year, and 368 hours of new programming, so we stay busy.
You were going to say something?
I was just going to say good job,
Yeah.
because you guys are doing stuff that's amazing.
I would
And there's
second
2 of you, well, with a little help here and there. But yeah, when I see the reports and I see the things that are going on, yeah, it's an amazing amount of work. So thank you.
Yeah, good job. Okay,
I do have a question, though.
yeah.
In that I noticed the difference between SD and HD, between Comcast and CenturyLink. Is there a plan on the CenturyLink side for an HD channel, or a desire on the city's part for that?
As part of the possible sale to Greatland, the city negotiated an upgrade to high definition. The Comcast has chosen to this point, to follow the letter of the law in that agreement, which was to give us 1 HD channel last April. And then a year later would be the opportunity to gain another channel. And what they've told us verbally so far is that there'd need to be a negotiation and exchange of something in order to receive an additional HD channel. So we're not quite there yet on how to proceed, but we do expect to work on getting a second HD channel. The first channel, we are choosing to use a best of Park TV approach, with the vast majority of the programming being the van productions. But that's channel 859 on the Comcast system, and it's important that we continue to brand that and let people know about that, because not everything is in HD on although not everything is seen in HD on Comcast local channels 14, 15, 16, 17, and 96. Virtually all the productions for the last several years have been in HD, and John began producing in HD last fall. So as soon as we have a place to show that in HD on Comcast, we'll be thrilled to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, just in time. Yeah, there we go. Screensaver hit it just as I was doing it. Okay. Actually, anything, just out of curiosity, the line item for the agenda says Park TV Marketing, Programming, and Equipment. Is there anything in the marketing side that you want to discuss by any chance?
Well, we had a University of Minnesota School of Journalism senior approach us about doing our capstone project on a marketing area, and so we suggested Park TV. So she's going to be putting together a strategic communications plan for Park TV as part of her final project. The next thing that you'll see related to this, she's put together survey questions that we'll be putting out on Nextdoor and via our social media and website that people can respond to, and that's one way she'll gather information for the rest of her project.
Okay, Bruce?
What?
Yeah, it's all your fault. For those of you watching, we do have fun here.
Occasionally, yes.
Yeah, I thought I'd let you talk about the Smart City Subcommittee and what's going on.
Well, I don't have a whole lot to say, and I got to scroll through something here and find it because there were a couple of things that I could make mention of. We're still kind of in early stages trying to define what exactly is a smart city because the definitions are all over the place. I wish I had the piece of paper that I had at our other meeting, which had a pretty good definition. I just can't remember what it was right now. But when we look at other cities that have started to develop infrastructure, there we go, for taking advantage of Wi-Fi or internet connectivity, a lot of the larger cities are using it for traffic control, which in a place like San Diego or a place like Los Angeles, certainly they could probably save a lot of money and have a lot less headaches and better traffic flow following something like that. We don't have that kind of problem here in St. Louis Park because we're not the size of those cities. But Abe and I have talked about a couple of things that we could do initially to start out simply. And some of this falls into the category of some of the other commissions that are advising the City Council as well. Things as simple as having charging stations for electric automobiles in certain areas. That is part of what a smart city could be. I know City Council, I believe, Reg, if somebody's coming into the city and building a new building, there are some requirements now that did not exist before in terms of paying attention to energy usage. Am I going up the wrong tree here, or am I remembering correctly?
That hasn't been passed yet.
Okay,
But it
but
is
they are
in the
discussing it?
works, correct.
Okay.
And the electric charging vehicle stations is actually a Kickstarter project for the Climate
Okay.
Action Plan that was recently passed by the City
Okay.
Council.
And I know we've talked about one of the simpler things was streetlights. As people have to replace streetlights, they're going with LED lighting because it's more energy efficient. And if you're putting up a new pole to install for LED lighting, there are some things you could do, like install a camera on the pole to give us more views of what's happening within the city. Also, small cell technology for Wi-Fi capability certainly could be put on a pole as well. Theoretically, you could probably have a charging station on a pole, depending upon how much power is available. I don't know if that's what they would want to do, but it's certainly a possibility. Or you need to recharge your phone, plug it in here, perhaps, I don't know.
Imagine putting your credit card in a light pole.
So those are things that we're looking at. How do we make internet availability affordable for people so that more people have it? We're looking at things like medical services, which can be done over the internet now. Educating older people within the community, how they can utilize this to their advantage. That's part of what some of this is too. Transportation, which came up in not just the smart city piece, but also in the visioning process for the city. How can we make it easier for people to get around within the city proper? I was, and I don't know if Reg mentioned this or somebody else mentioned, and maybe it was you, Abe, I don't recall, but there are numbers on bus stations around the area that correspond to mapping, is it, of some sort? So you can actually pull out your phone and you can actually determine where the bus is going, when it arrives, and
Yeah, that was
the
the city of
destinations.
Chicago example.
Yeah, and I think, is that happening here now?
Well, actually, John brought this up, that the Metro Transit has apps available.
Okay.
And he suggested that we get in touch with them
Okay.
and identify some of the things that are available at different stops in
There
St.
you
Louis
go.
Park. And so, no, we haven't gotten any further on that, and I guess I should sort of give a heads up to the rest of the commission that Bruce has been doing an incredible job here
thanks.
of extemporizing and summarizing what we've been discussing in our three or four meetings so far. But realistically, we haven't made any concrete suggestions for this commission, and we hope to have a report with some concrete suggestions for the May meeting. And we may push it back to the following meeting, especially
Okay.
if it turns out that both Comcast and we get a 5G expert that night. That'd be a pretty long meeting to start asking you guys to vote something up or down. But nonetheless, we plan for the subcommittee to meet again so that they can give you guys something, an ability to approve of the direction that we're going.
John, you brought something up on your phone. Is that something that's available now?
Yeah, I have a picture that I took this week on Tuesday when my car was being repaired, so I took the bus to Lenox Community
Okay.
Center. And so certain bus stops have a improved sign where it says this is stop number, and it has a 4-digit sign. So if you're going eastbound on Minnetonka Boulevard in front of Lenox Community Center, that's stop number 5784. So you can text MTC 5784 to another 6-digit number, and you'll get a response that says a bus is coming by in, could be 12 minutes, and then another bus is coming by in 52 minutes, and another bus is coming. And so that type of information is really handy if you're saying, should I wait out here in this wind, particularly if there's no shelter there, or what should I do? And I had actually had the experience of, I went to the regular online schedule thing, and it said, oh yeah, a bus is leaving at France and Lake Street at 12:07. Well, at 12:27, that bus still hadn't arrived, so I used this, and they said, bus is coming by in 8 minutes, and it did. So one of the things that the city could choose to do is city buildings and city resources like parks and stuff that are by a numbered bus stop, we can start baking that information in to what the city does about saying, here's a park, bus stop number, 4 or 5-digit number is, it's on line 17, or a different line, could be 12. And that can be going, in the future, the type of thing that people know about, that they can find out. They don't have to drive a car, they can take a bus if they want to try that out.
So John, that was through texting. That was not through, there's a Metro Transit app, I think.
Yes, there is an app, but this was the information that was actually printed on the sign. So you could have a flip phone or a candy bar phone. All it has is telephone calling and texting. You could still get that information.
Okay. There used to be, and it was developed out of a hackathon, and it's a Minnesota group, which I don't think the app is working at the moment, but it's called OMG Transit, and it would pinpoint where you are standing and how many minutes away your bus was. So if you were saying, I'm outside here, and you're waiting for the 17, it would tell you how many minutes away it was. It was like each of the buses, or all of the buses, had a GPS tracker on it.
Yeah, it's the Chicago method. But I could see reason for both. One is you're in your house and you want to know if you want to go out.
Yeah.
And the other one is I'm standing there, where the heck's the bus? Or any combination thereof of circumstance. I could see a need for, yeah. So,
One of the other things that came up that just hit me before I forget it was, well, hopefully we're getting out of the snow season, but we'll see how that works out. It's probably a little early yet. But one of the things that came out of one of the meetings was we could put information on the snowplows and things, which would tell people where they're going to be, when they're going to be plowing the road, when you need to get your car off the road, and when the road has been plowed. And that could be something through a phone app or something like that that gives people more information. Okay, I know I need to move my car. We call snow emergencies, and the city's really good about that. But sometimes people don't hear it, or they don't always know, okay, is it over yet? And knowing where the plows are at a given time could be useful information.
I have a suspicion some cities have some,
Maybe.
either exactly what you just said or something on the way.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that a lot of them have stuff that monitor the plows. They want to know if the plow thing is up or down, especially after that little union activity several years ago. They drove with the plows up just to prove a point. So they put sensors on them, and then they tracked them going through the streets. And so then they knew they were getting plowed and not pseudo-plowed. But then if you take it to the next level of detail, and you in the home would like to know what's going on, I have a suspicion that there may be some of that already out there that we could investigate.
There's an environmental opportunity there you mentioned salt in terms of how much salt is laid down, how much salt is on the road. Take a farming approach. What's the nutrients in the ground? Well, what's on the pavement already? Do you need to resalt as you scan? And can you reduce salt and the amount of salt going into the wetlands around us?
Exactly. And I don't know, this is kind of just a general question. I don't even know if we know how many people actually have use internet access in the city. I'm assuming a great majority of the population does, but I don't have a number. I don't really know. I think anybody that has kids in school, they're probably all over the internet. But older adults in our community, I don't know how they fare by comparison and whether most people in the city have internet access and use it. I just don't know.
I had a senior that was a client for a senior video club today in City Hall, and he goes to the library for his internet access. He doesn't have a computer at home.
And does he not have a computer because he can't afford it or doesn't want to do it, or just finds the library to be an easier stop?
I didn't have that conversation with him, but I think it's probably an economical decision. Having a computer at home and having dial-up, dial-up costs only half as much as broadband, yet it's less useful now with the image-laden and video-laden websites that you have to try to get through in order to get the information.
There is dial-up? There is such a thing as dial-up still?
I think there is.
Right, but it's
offers
it's less. AOL still exists.
Well, yeah, but I just assumed. Yeah. Okay.
You've got mail.
That's why I'm in the high-tech business, not the low-tech business. So, okay.
Can I just?
Yeah, please.
I know I'm just presenting an issue, not a solution, but you mentioned traffic, and I agree with you that there's not a need for it, but there is a traffic situation that I am wondering if we could help with, and that's the pedestrian traffic. With especially like at Beltline, and then also on Wooddale.
Wooddale,
Yeah, and so.
Well, they are going to be doing some work on the bridge on Wooddale to widen the pedestrian areas. That is something that's going to be happening this year sometime, I think, if I remember hearing correctly. But, the only real traffic area that I can ever think of regarding St. Louis Park is always Excelsior Boulevard and the interchange with Highway 100,
Yeah.
which gets a little funky sometimes. There are cities that measure traffic flow with cameras and adjust the lights accordingly to give the traffic a better motion through the area. I don't know if that's worthwhile in our particular case, but
For
it's something.
pedestrians, yeah.
And for pedestrians, I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
don't know if that would be an advantage or not. But yeah, it's something that certainly would fit squarely into this.
I would say for the state more than for the city, especially with people using, Android Auto, CarPlay or Apple Auto, whatever or I mixed the names up, where you could, see things on your infotainment screen. And I know that, like in Detroit, they got traffic cams on all the freeways there. So if somebody wanted to look ahead and see what the traffic was, if there was an app on their smartphone that a passenger obviously could be using because you're driving, one would think, then there'd be some value to that. But that's a completely different thing than a smart city. But I would say if you're trying to avoid traffic, other than using Waze where people typed in and let you know that 494 East has stopped up, go 62 to the airport or something. There could be some interesting applications for that where you could self-manage yourself in traffic. But I'm not sure that's a smart city application per se, at least for St. Louis Park.
But technology too, I was reminded again, and it was something I never even thought about, but one of the Ebenezer homes in the metropolitan area is experimenting with virtual technology for their senior residents in the nursing home areas. And they're discovering that, and I don't know who, somebody gave them some money to start to work on this to see what kind of a result that they would get. So they've got the goggles on with the phone slapped up against the goggles, and they're finding that it actually helps their residents. They go on vacation without having to go anywhere. They go on a virtual vacation. And they're really liking it. And the results, people are happier. It's actually doing things like lowering blood pressure. And it's a very early thing, and I don't remember which Ebenezer home it was. But I want to say it was someplace in Minneapolis proper. But that was another thing that never even crossed my mind. That's certainly technology, and it's certainly internet-delivered technology. So there's another thought.
So it's for like relaxation and not games?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm very interested.
I want to go to Hawaii. I can do that in my goggles.
Watch the movie Soylent Green.
I have.
So do you remember how he Edward G. Robinson it was, right? Right
Yes.
before he decided he had enough. Yeah, never mind.
One thing I'd just like to offer is I think a next step for the Smart Cities Subcommittee will be to talk with some city staff and have them come in as guests, because many of
Yes.
our departments are already
Yes,
doing
yes.
a lot of what you're talking about. For example, Public Works and the sensors they have on snow removal related to salt and all of those types of things. As
I
well
love
as
it.
engineering
Yeah,
has looked
yeah.
into many of these things, and also our public safety staff are interested in telemedicine and those types of things. So I do think it will be important for this subcommittee to have those discussions with city staff before we get too far down the road of recommendations
You're
and things.
absolutely right. So how do we do that? Work with Reg and you'll set up some meetings? We'll be happy to attend, you bet.
Yep, I think
That works
that's,
out great.
I think that's the logical thing to do.
Oh, I think that's an excellent idea.
Are non-subcommittee members allowed to crash the party?
I don't have any problem with that.
Only if you bring lunch.
I could certainly invite the rest of the commission to it. The thing we have to be cautious of and careful about is the open meeting law. And if we have a quorum, then we need to provide advance notice because it needs to be, appropriate.
So what's the number for a quorum?
Yeah, 4.
So there's 2 of us as sort of permanent members, and I guess 1 more could attend without making a quorum.
That's right.
So first come, first serve on when we put out the thing. I guess that's the only way to do it. Okay. Good input. Finally, communications from the chair. I think I've said enough. Any commissioners have anything they want to say? Other than have a nice
I'll
day?
just add one thing. Last week, I was at the, if you're familiar with Gartner Research, I was at the Gartner Data and Analytics Summit last week
Absolutely.
in Texas. Good number of presentations on things like IoT.
Oh, yeah.
I'll go through the materials and share with the Smart Cities
I would love that.
Subcommittee.
You know, I've personally been in the IoT business now for about 5 years, so I gather you're somewhat in it yourself, so, as is Clint, and so on, so great. Yeah, I'd love to see it. All right, anybody else?
One thing crossed my mind as I'm looking through information here. We found out with our last meeting with CenturyLink that the city of Richfield is completely wired with fiber to the home throughout the entire city.
Good for them.
And part of the reason that happened is because they've been doing a lot of construction projects. 66th Street was one of those. It gave them an opportunity to run the fiber that they needed to accomplish the task, and the whole city is wired. They're the only city that's wired.
Well, that was a
Completely.
mistake that I think St. Louis Park made when they were digging up the streets to fix piping a few years ago. Nobody went and laid fibers in the open street. And I'm like, what is everybody waiting for? But nobody took the bait.
It was just an interesting, I had no idea.
You know I'm right.
I'm staying out of this.
Okay, communication from the city staff. Jackie, John, Reg, anything you guys want to add? Ooh, paper.
Here's the latest list of program premieres that have premiered or are soon to premiere on TV 15. Everyone at this table is getting weekly schedules from TV 15, and one of the things we're going to start including is a streaming link for Park TV at archive.org. They have, independent of anything that we do, been getting programs that we upload to YouTube. They now have an archive of 1,600 of those programs, and you can stream them or download them from archive.org. So that if somebody says, how on earth would I get something from YouTube? We say, well, go to archive.org, and here's the link, and you can get either a program that we upload to YouTube that's, let's say it's an hour long and it's 2.5 gigabytes. When you get a version from archive.org, it could be only half a gigabyte. So it's compressed a little bit, but the quality's still good for the highest level. And we're also encouraging people to use the My St. Louis Park app on their smartphone or tablet. If you scroll to the end of the icons to choose from, Park TV is there, and when you click on it, it takes you to the most recent uploads that we've put on our channel on YouTube, which is SLP Cable. That's the name of our channel.
Excellent info. I forgot about the My St. Louis Park app. I'm going to go get it. Okay, on that note, I think we're, you
Just
know, there
one
was
more.
a female talk show host in the Twin Cities. Turi Ryder, I think was her name, back in the 90s. And if anybody ever said on her show, after calling it about something, one more thing, she disconnected them and hung up on them right on the radio. She said that was not allowed on her show. Anyway, I'm just giving you a hard time.
I wanted to mention that we also have a high school intern working with us. I don't know if we'd mentioned this at the last meeting, but he is a St. Louis Park resident and a Hopkins High School student, and he is in the Propel program at Hopkins High School. So he interviewed a number of organizations that do video work, and he chose us to do his internship from January through May. So he's been working closely with Jermaine and with Reg and with John on some various productions, and he'll be producing a short commercial for the police department that will be his final project for his internship. So we've been very pleased to have him.
All right, that sounds great. Okay. In that case, does anybody want to make a motion for adjournment?
I'll move that we adjourn for this evening.
Somebody want a second?
I second.
All opposed? I thought I would switch it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the ayes have it. We're done.